guys. Dr. Ameens Ali, Federation of International Gender and Human Rights here, coming to you from New York City. And I am coming today to speak to you about gender-based violence. And I'm going to speak on a few topics that have touched the community that I work with, as well as the women that I serve and I service internationally. And we're going to bring a little light to gender-based violence so that we can better understand what it is, how it is, and how it affects us. We have a few aspects of gender-based violence. Some of these aspects deal with the physical and some deal with the emotional. What we're going to be talking about is the education on what it is that we normally deal with it and how we normally see it. And this is because this will be better able for you to understand where gender-based violence comes in, and then some of the attributes about it so that you will better understand how to recognize it and then get people the help that they need. Okay? So gender-based violence, what is that? First of all, let's define what gender-based violence is. Gender-based violence is gender, which is specific to male or female, based, which means it only happens because they are male or female. And then it's violence, which is an attack, an assault, or an aggression against someone that did not warrant it, ask for it, or deserve it. So knowing that gender-based violence is dealing with what it is that someone else does to another person, we have to understand that this is something that is curable. This is something that we can end, but we have to be a bit educated on this. Most of the time we understand gender-based violence before it became a term was when we were dealing with women. Some of the women that I deal with in my care are women of foreign parentage. Some of them are from Africa and India and Pakistan. Some are from the far reaches of Europe that are seen as less than. They're either in a caste system or they're in a class system that doesn't hold them accountable to anything other than taking care of the family. This is a gender-based violence because it's violence. It's an aggression against them that says that they're not going in a direction of positivity. All they're good for is staying at home and having children. Well, it bothers women when you do that because it tells them that they're only good for having children and being a wife. So that is labeled as a gender-based violence. It's called oppression. And oppression is one of the main reasons that women, especially women, and some men are dealing with gender-based violence around the world. Another form of gender-based violence is rape, R-A-P-E. Rape is an attempted or actual assault against a woman or man in a sexual form. This can be anything that deals with attempting rape, actual sodomy, or anything that deals with physical attacking of the person for sexual gratification or reason. And as we know, rape has nothing to do with the woman or what she's dressed as or how she performs. It has to do with power and dominance. But that is a gender-based violence that is very common, especially in war-torn areas and areas where there is a male dominance that is an oppressive force. So we'll see a lot of rapes in war-torn areas where they have a lot of soldiers and a lot of power and a lot of freedoms that go unchecked, okay? The next one is sexual abuse. Now there's a difference between sexual rape and sexual abuse. And there are a few factors of sexual abuse. Now sexual dealing with the gender sex, not the physical sex per se. The gender sex of sexual abuse is aggression, assertion, assault, harassment, intimidation, and exploitation, to include human trafficking and sexual trafficking. Aggression is when you just force yourself. Aggression can be seen as a man and woman is talking and a man just decides that he wants to touch her hair or he wants to touch her shoulder, or he doesn't ask permission to give her a hug or touch her physical body. He was very aggressive with her. And he feels as though that that's the right thing to do because society doesn't tell him that it's wrong. He may be raised in this environment. He may see his father or his grandfather do it to his mother or his grandmother. And he may think that that's okay to do when he goes into society. So he's very aggressive with women. whereas he does what he wants and he doesn't see anything wrong with it. Sexual assertion. Sexual assertion is we see it a lot on social media. This is when you get a friend request, and then it's normally a woman, it's normally a man to a woman. A man will go in there and request her friendship, and it'll be on Facebook or LinkedIn, and then the man will go into the inbox and start talking, oh, you're so beautiful, oh, you're so pretty, oh, I can't wait to know, I want to hug you. And that's assertion, because you're assuming, one, that she's not married. You're assuming that you can talk to her like that. And you're assuming that it's okay for you to say these things to her in an inbox because you think it's private. That sexual abuse is called sexual assertion. Because you're a man and because she's a woman, you feel as though it's okay to do. And that is so wrong that here in the United States, that's actually a jailable offense. You can actually go to jail for doing that. It's called stalking. And stalking is actually a sexual assertion that you do through the internet, through media, or through an email. So you email someone doing the same thing. Sexual assault. Well, we just talked about that. One of the forms of sexual assault is rape. But sexual assault can come in other matters. When a man walks across, when a woman walks in front of a man and a man hits her on her behind, or when he sees her in public and he sees her shirt and he says, oh, your shirt is so nice, and he touches her inappropriately. Or if he sees her with others, he'll walk up and he'll just hug her and he'll rub her up and down. That is sexual assault, because you did not ask for that, and he did it in a physical manner. That is actually also something you can go to jail for here in the United States. Then there is sexual harassment. That's normally in the workplace, but sexual harassment can be anywhere. You can live next to somebody that sexually harasses you. You can actually be in school with someone that sexually harasses you. And this is unwanted touch, conversation, or maybe even communication with someone that you don't want, you didn't ask for, and even in your conversations, you're saying, stop doing this. If they still continue, that's considered sexual harassment. Again, another jailable offense. Then there's sexual intimidation. That is the strongest force of abuse. This is when a man decides that he has a wife and he wants to talk to his wife any old kind of way. And when he has sex with her, he's aggressive to her. He demands sex. We even see that in certain religions where you're fasting and the husband will say, you need to break your fast because I just want to have sex. And he just makes her break her fast, and there's no real reason. And we see this in religious circles, and we're trying to get the education to the women that that is not right. That is called sexual intimidation. You are doing it because you are a man or because you are a husband and you're head of household, and you're taking advantage of the opportunities. You're not being compassionate and kind to her. You're not allowing her to do the things that you need to do. So you're intimidating her by making it seem like that if she doesn't, then she's a bad wife, and that she may even subjugate herself to divorce. And the last one is sexual exploitation. This is something we're dealing with very heavy here in New York. It's coming from other countries. We have people from the African continent that is taking in people. We have people from the European countries that are exporting the kids. This means that they're bringing them from other places, bringing them to the European countries. We have those that are internally doing it through sexual parties, sexual events. And I say sexual events because it's huge in some Asian countries and some Indo-Paki countries, because they have parties and they invite the girls that are underage to do certain things in lure of a party. And this is something that we're finding. They're bringing them from villages. They're paying their parents small dowries to take their children, and they're using them for sexual purpose and sexual gratification. They're selling them into the sex trade, and they're also selling them across other countries, and they're importing them to other countries. This is sexual exploitation. And this is all gender-based violence, acts of violence that are perpetrated against our youth, our young women, and especially vulnerable women that may not be educated or knowledgeable about it. And the last one that we want to talk about, which is very, very huge, in dealing with gender-based violence, we have forced early marriages. Oh my goodness, I can't even tell you how bad this is. Dowries are as high as $2,000 and $3,000 US, even upwards of $5,000 US. They are coming to these families and they're getting these daughters, and they're paying poor families to be able to take their daughters off their hands. They're giving them millions and millions of dollars in denominations and other denominations just to take their daughter away and marry them off to European men, African men, and even American men, so that they can have young women in their care. Now, in society, they pass them off as I adopted her, but really they are legally married to these girls, and they're requiring them to have babies. And they're requiring them to have babies because they want to have as many children as they can before the girl gets too old and too invaluable. And then we have female genital mutilation, which is one of the cultural adaptations that we are banning. We have banned here in the United States, and we have banned in Africa for the most part. We're trying to get it in other countries, but female genital mutilation is the castrating of women in the form of removing her clitoris or removing part of her clitoris. Some religions say that that's proper, but it's not written in any of the religions that are formidable. It is only a cultural or traditional practice that is tribal and very practical to an old standard of ways to do things. It's a very traditional practice, but it is outlawed in many countries because it scars the woman and it has no real practical value. Severing her clitoris has nothing to do with her sexual desires. Sexual desires come from up here. If you desire anything, just like when men desire women, they don't desire it with their sex organ. They desire it from up here, from what they see. So likewise, if a woman is desiring a man, she's desiring it because of what she sees. So in order for you to avoid that, you would have to either take out her eyes or take out her brain, which is improbable and impossible. So what they feel is though if they take away something in her vagina, that it would hurt her and it would allow her not to desire sex. But they don't realize that those girls grow up and they actually get married. So now once they're married with this trauma that has happened to them, now sex is painful, having babies is difficult, mothers and babies actually die during this. And we want to stop female genital mutilation across all continents because it is something that is not necessary, it is not mandated, and the only thing it does is repeat a cycle that wasn't necessary in the first place. Okay. We are going to go into intimate partner violence. Intimate partner violence is abuse or aggression, personal relationships. So we call it intimate partner because 90% of the people that are dealing with IPV or intimate partner violence are dealing with people that they are either in a relationship with, are married to, or they are being in acts of incest that is happening to them. So that means their father, their grandfather, or maybe their uncle is doing something to them that they have no business doing to the girl. Intimate partner violence is actually a dual face. You can have it where you are married to the person or it's someone in your family. It equally can be someone you just met, someone that you're interested in. Maybe you're in conversation with them and you're not quite married yet, but you're in conversation to be married. And this is to allow the conversation to go a little further, where we talked about the aggression and the assertion in gender-based violence, where they start becoming a little bit more aggressive. They start tempering themselves into an understanding as to what they feel they want, what they feel they deserve, and because of their culture or their tribal traditions, they feel they're okay to do. Intimate partner violence has a few categories to this. It is self-directed, it is collective, warfare, interpersonal, and targeted. These are the few that we'll talk about today. Self-directed intimate partner violence has to deal with parricide or self-harm, suicidal ideations, and completed suicidal ideations. Parricide is when you self-harm. This is when you cut yourself. This is when you shave off your head, shave off your hair, excuse me, and you pick at the growing hair. This is when you self-harm or self-mutilate, when you start cutting off things. You may start harming your leg or cutting your arm. Things that we see as detrimental, but you see as an ideation because you're dealing with something and you don't know how to get other relief. 9 times out of 10, most people that cut themselves or mutilate themselves is because they're in pain. And the only way to relieve the pain is to make sure that they feel relief or release in some way. And this can come from cutting. This can come from stabbing or poking, pulling out hair, or just shaving your head and incessantly keeping yourself in a very neutral stance. In other words, you feel like if, like, for example, if you have a boyfriend or, excuse me, a family member, and that family member is touching you, and the first thing they say is, oh, your hair is so beautiful. Someone that wants to get away from that, they'll shave their head so there's nothing for them to look at. And they want to do that because they fear as though, oh, well, if they like my hair, I'm going to shave my head so there's nothing for them to like about me, and they'll leave me alone. When someone is being sexually molested, which means a father or an uncle or grandfather is touching a young girl or an older girl in the family, they will dress in a bad way, or they may dress like a boy. If it's a girl, they dress like a boy. They shave their head so that they look unattractive. They may not wash or bathe. And then they may seem as though that they are withdrawn. And these are all classic symptoms of someone bothering them and them taking a way to relieve themselves. When that doesn't work, they may turn to hurting themselves or harming themselves. In their mind, they're thinking they're relieving the pressure, but what they're really doing is they're making themselves unattractive so that the person that's hurting them won't hurt them anymore. The next one is suicidal ideation, which is clear. These are when you say, you know what, I cut myself, I shave my head, I don't bathe, I make myself unattractive, and they still want to bother me. I would rather die than to be in this situation. So they start planning. They start planning for suicide. They start planning in their suicide attempts. They may drink a poison, or they may smoke a drug or inject a drug in their arm in hopes that they will go to sleep and not wake up. Some people will go so far as to use a gun or use a knife to try to end their life. And this is because they feel as though death is better than what they're living with. Completed ideations or completed suicide or death by suicide is just that. They have done everything they could to stop it. No one listened, no one helped them, and they feel as though the best thing to do is to die. And they are successful, whether they shoot themselves, they stab themselves, they take a poison and the poison takes effect and it stops their heart, or whatever it is that they choose to do. But they have left this life because they wanted to leave the punishment that they're dealing with, and they knew no other way. The next one is collective violence. Now, this is more structural. A collective violence normally happens to a people. There are certain caste systems in society, and certain ones that we're dealing with now in the Federation, that says that because they're a part of that caste, they are not worthy people. There are certain caste systems that don't allow you to get good jobs. They only allow you to clean up and clean poop on the street, or they don't allow you to get jobs of dignity, to earn any money. You have to live in poverty, and you can't live in certain parts of town because you're in this caste system. And that's wrong. That's inhumane. And the only reason why they do it is because generations before have done it, and the people now are just keeping it up. That's very inhumane. It's very ignorant. And it is, in certain situations, a crime against humanity. So that means the UN has come in and has posed criminal offenses against the countries that allow that. Why? Because it is very inhumane. No person should be just left to a caste system that was set up by men or man and set up to keep someone down. That's oppression, that's a slavery, and that's illegal in this day and time. So a collective violence is normally against a group of people. That is a violence, and as a member of the UN, it is something that I'm fighting for vehemently, especially in communities that still have caste systems and those caste systems that are not being eradicated, so that all will have an equal chance to be happy, healthy, and attain a positive life. The next one is warfare. And I know most people say, well, how is warfare an act of violence? Well, intimate partner violence falls into this because if the man goes off to war and he dies, what happens to the woman? Now, in some cases, the woman is fair game. Anybody can marry her. She's a widow. The husband has died. She's free to marry. And in some cases during war times, the soldiers just take the wives. Sometimes they kill the husbands right in front of the wives. And they molest or they sexually assault the wife, the girls, and any children. We notice this happening in a lot of areas that don't have a lot of policing. They're in a war, but there aren't any people on the ground protecting the people that are not amongst the war. And this happens in a lot of countries that are still at war right now. There are no protections in place. The UN is fighting feverishly to be able to get protection for those people. But when we deal with warfare and intimate partner violence, we deal with the fact that there's too many people with a lot of power that truly does not know how to use it. And because of that, we are seeing an increase in this intimate partner violence, where the soldiers are taking women captive and they're turning them into sex slaves, or they're raping the young children, both boys and girls, because they're young and they feel as though that this is an age where they can get away with it. And they're taking all of the children and they're putting them in one camp, putting the women in another camp, and they're having their way with it. So warfare determines a lot of this violence that we're seeing. And the intimate partner violence is when they allude the women to thinking that they would be helped in some way, only to accost them and be of violence to them. Let's use that word. Okay, next is interpersonal violence. Now, interpersonal violence is similar to self-directed violence, but it is of the same, it's of the same value. Interpersonal violence is what it is that you say to yourself: I'm not worthy, I'm not worth it, I'm not enough. And these are things that come because your partner has told you that. This interpersonal violence is what you do to yourself, and it's not physical, it's the mental side of it. It's the part of your psyche that is worn down and worn away because you've been around someone that has been violent to you intentionally, whether it be emotional, intellectual, or just psychological. And these are people that we have to watch out. These are narcissists that have relationships with women and men, and they have relationships on the verge of control. That's all they want. They really don't want a relationship with the person. They just want to control something. And they get in these relationships and they let the women know that, oh, you need me. Oh, you can't do anything without me. You need my money, or you need me to help you. We see this in a lot of religions also, where the man wants to use the fact that he's your husband. Well, I have to go with you everywhere you go. And they use the fact that cultures and traditions in religion has allowed men to accompany women. But they use it as a matter of control to find out what she's doing and where she's going and who she's with. They're not doing it for security, which is what the woman is actually, that's her right to be secure. They're doing it because they want to control where she goes. No, you don't need to go there. No, you don't need to go there. You go where I tell you to go, and you go grocery shopping where I tell you to go grocery shopping. It's too much control. And this interpersonal violence happens when the woman believes that she deserves this from this man. We are dealing with quite a few women now. We're dealing with women, personally right now, we're dealing with women from the Arabias, and we're dealing with women that are from the Indo-Paki area. And unfortunately, these women have been told this since childhood. So we're dealing with a lot of education. We're dealing with Africans that have done this by tradition. And they feel as though it's okay to have, they use religion to have 2 and 3 and 4 wives. They're not supporting them properly. They're not doing what they're supposed to do with them. They're marrying young women just to be able to say that they have such a young woman. These are older men, 40 and 50 years old, marrying 13, 14, 15-year-old women. And they're not doing it for the right reasons. They're only doing it because they want to feel like they're young again, and they want to have children. They want to have more children. So this is the interpersonal piece. Then the targeted violence. The targeted violence, just like the when we talked about the gender-based violence and we talked about assault and harassment, this targeted violence is that stalking I was talking about. This is when you don't take no for an answer. When you're on social media, and let's say, for example, I tell this gentleman, he comes on, he says, Amina, may we be a friend? And I accept his friend request, and he comes on and he says, I want to talk to you. And I'm like, well, I don't want to talk to you right now. I have things to do. So he'll look on my profile and he'll get my email. And because I'm not talking to him on social media, he'll email me. Hi, Amina, I want to talk to you right now. And I'm like, I don't want to talk to you. I'm busy. So then he'll see on the bottom of my email my phone number. And then he'll call me, and then he'll text me, and he'll go to WhatsApp, and he'll do all of the things to try to get my attention. That is very desperate. And it speaks to how desperate people are for attention. This is a mental illness. And when you have people that do this, this is something that you have to call to the attention of the authorities, because they're not going to stop on their own. They're not going to do this. And then because you say stop, they're just going to stop. Because if that was the case, then they would have stopped with the social media. They wouldn't have gone to the internet. They wouldn't have gone to WhatsApp. They wouldn't have gone to your phone. They don't know how to stop, because again, their only thing is to control you at the level that they want to control you. They want all of your attention. They want to stalk you until you give them your attention. And remember, bad attention is still attention. So this is something that you have to keep in mind. Even though you're coming to them and you're telling them, look, I don't want to deal with this. This is not something that I want to partake in. I don't know you. I'm sorry I connected with you. You start blocking them, they find other ways. This is stalking. This is actually a criminal offense here in the United States. You can get up to 3 years in prison for doing this. And this is so that people will be protected here. I know in Europe, Great Britain and France, I know that there's a stalking law there. They're trying to make measure of that in Australia. I don't know if it has gone into effect as of yet, but they actually have stalking laws in certain countries in Africa as well. And we're trying to make this a norm through the Human Rights Act. We're also trying to make it a part of the Declaration of Human Rights. And we're also working with the UN to make that a probability, because a lot of young girls are being stalked, and a lot of times they're being worn down into sexual trafficking and human trafficking because the person just won't let go. They won't stop bothering them. So this is where we are trying to eliminate the stalking, trying to eliminate connection, and definitely eliminating the fact that we are making it easy for people to get stalked in that manner. I have one more, and we're going to talk about everyday intimate partner violence. And this is something that's new. I wanted to bring that in because we're doing research on it. But what we're finding thus far on everyday intimate partner violence is when you are out and about in society and you are noticing that people are coming on to you more often than not. For example, when you walk down the street and you're wearing something nice and you see people say, oh, wow, you look nice, that's fine. But when you see people, when you're walking down the street and people are coming up to you, ooh, I wonder what it's like underneath that top, or I wonder what you look like with your clothes off, or anything like that. That is somebody that is trying to become intimate with you, not necessarily your partner, but someone that you may see every day as you walk down the street. It could be someone on the bus with you. It could be someone that rides the train with you. They are not necessarily someone that you're interested in, or someone that you are wanting a relationship with, but the everyday cordialness that you have with them can breed into intimate partner violence. This is when someone takes your being kind as you being giving consent to hurt someone or go against that person. And I think it is one of the things that I am learning in this, in what we're getting the data on, that this breeds into other things such as stalking, such as aggression, and definitely assertion. And we're trying to amass this into data so that we can better help the problem and get rights given back to the victims and begin to allow them to become a bit more stronger in attaining and sustaining their human rights and their dignity. Thank you.